Welcome in, everyone, to a jam-packed episode of Craze's Corner. Today, we're going to be talking about our top 10 quarterbacks for fantasy football next year. So you're definitely going to stay tuned for our consensus rankings on that. But first, we have a whole heck of a lot of news to go through. So we're going to start with the franchise tagging that went on this past week. We had 8 franchise tagged used. Devante Adams, Orlando Brown, Chris Godwin, Jesse Bates, Mike Gesicki, Dalton Schultz, David Njoku, which was a surprising one, and Cam Robinson were all franchise tagged by their team. Another important signing, Mike Williams, a 3-year, $60 million deal, which these people are going to get paid this offseason, $20 million a year for Mike Williams. That's a lot. So we should see some great market values out there. The second story, which was the biggest story of the day until everything else happened, Aaron Rodgers has agreed to stay in Green Bay. Ian Rappaport tweeted out that it was a 4-year, $200 million deal. Aaron Rodgers then later came out and denied that the deal was signed, but he did confirm that he will be back in Green Bay. So whether it's on that massive deal, Aaron Rodgers will be back with Green Bay, and they'll look to compete next season. They're trying to go win that championship. And then another quarterback, huge trade. Carson Wentz was traded to the Washington Commanders in exchange for a second-round pick swap, which favored Indianapolis, as well as another second or third, which could be a second next year if they reach 70% playing time, a third-round pick. The Colts now have the most cap in the league, and they various options at quarterback, whether it's trading for Jimmy Garoppolo or signing a free agent. And the biggest news of the past week, the Denver Broncos have acquired Russell Wilson and a 4th-round pick in exchange for Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a 5th-round pick. So that's a massive trade, and we want to know who you guys think won that deal. Do you guys think the Broncos won? They have that quarterback. Do you guys think it was the Seattle Seahawks getting those picks and Drew Lock? Let us know using the Media app. The Media app is a virtual press conferencing app that allows you to host your own virtual press conference from your phone. You can change your backgrounds up. It's going to be a great time. So let us know. Post it to your social medias and tag me at Pro Football Craze or Media on Instagram, Facebook. You can find them anywhere, and the app is available on the Google Play and the App Store, so go check it out. And now let's welcome in our guests. We have a group today, Zach, Jeff, and Will. Welcome in, guys.
Hey, Zach.
What's happening?
What's
Not
going
too
on?
much. We're gonna talk about Russ a little later, but I want to get your guys' thoughts on the Carson Wentz trade. What does this do for the Washington football team, the Washington Commanders? I think it's a bump for Terry McLaurin a little bit, but I think their ceiling is now capped with Carson Wentz at quarterback. What do you guys think?
I'm going to let somebody else dive in on that one first.
Yep. Yeah, I posted like a poll seeing who would benefit more from this trade, the Antonio Gibson or Terry McLaurin. So I think overall from where they were before, this is an upgrade at quarterback. So essentially, right, everyone should kind of, even though their ceiling's capped, Jonathan Taylor had a pretty awesome season last year. Michael Pittman was pretty serviceable. So if you figure Carson Wentz can just apply that same season to this Washington Commanders team, Commander Wentz, they might be able to actually maybe not be superstars, but help McLaurin's value. Kind of had a letdown season last year. So I think it's a net positive.
Yeah, I agree. Will, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was told when I was young, if you can't say nothing nice, don't say nothing at all. I'm gonna leave it alone.
Yep.
And Jeff?
I think it could be an upgrade, except for the fact that Wentz doesn't have a quarterback whisperer there in Washington now, as he did with Indy. I was comfortable with trying to pick him up with Frank Reich, whispering to him. Now you got Ron Rivera. What the hell is he going to say? He wants to just run the ball anyway. But I think if he can go ahead, have a healthy offseason, who knows? He could regain some form. He's pretty much familiar with the NFC East, So they couldn't do much worse. I'll just put it like that. I think he is an upgrade over Heineke, although I kind of liked Heineke, liked his moxie. But,
should we put a wager?
I don't think it's going to move the needle to where they all of a sudden win the NFC East unless, their defense just plays lights out, which they kind of did not do last year.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think Heineke gets moved?
No.
I mean, they
better keep him.
He'll sit there as a backup?
I think so. With Carson Wentz as your quarterback, you got to have a good backup.
Right.
So I can't see them unless they're going to get like massive value for him. Taylor Heineke to me is a great backup quarterback.
Yeah.
I think that's about it. Yeah.
The best part of the trade for the Colts is they somehow got Washington to take on that whole salary.
Mm-hmm. The entire thing.
The entire $28 million.
I'm not sure how they pulled that off, but
wow.
Bravo. But let's get into our way too early top 10 ranked fantasy football quarterbacks. We're going to run through 1 to 10. And, started off at number 1, we have a two-way tie, surprisingly. We're going to talk about who Zach and I had at number 1 first, which is going to be Josh Allen, the quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen is amazing. They've struggled to run the ball, which has led to them just throwing the ball all over. I love Gabriel Davis, Stephon Diggs. And to me, what sets Josh Allen apart from, the other guys right behind him is Josh Allen is the best runner on his team currently. He scores rushing touchdowns. He gets those rushing yards, and that, increases his ceiling. For me, I have him ranked at the number 1 overall quarterback. Zach does as well. Zach, why is he your number 1 overall quarterback?
Because if you do a quick search, history, the last 2 seasons, he was quarterback 1. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. But I can see why. I'm not sure exactly. I didn't get to see the consensus ranking, so I'm not sure who the other person is. I'm assuming it's Pat Mahomes.
It's not Pat Mahomes.
Oh, spicy. Oh, no, I'm excited. Leave it. I want the excitement to build. But anyways, Josh Allen, it's the running that sets him, I think, above the rest, even Patrick Mahomes. You said it, the best runner on his team. I think that this offense can actually get better from what they are now, right? Like all the pieces are still intact. So if they can either build through the draft or a sneaky free agent or something, you're looking at an offense that's going to continue to improve, especially if they address the running back position. It's like this team could be pretty special. So
that'd be great for him in the option game to actually have that running back who, pulls that defender inside, especially in the red zone, get him a couple more walk-on touchdowns.
Yeah. But I would say that was actually the thing that kind of had me almost putting him at number 1. I was actually impressed at the end of the season how Devin Singletary came on. Yeah. And I think if they get that running game going, I think it will open up things for him where he doesn't, take the chance of getting hurt always going in, from 1 yard out. And I think he'll, be able to dump that ball to Singletary a little bit more as well. So the running touchdowns will just concede over to more passing touchdowns.
Mm-hmm. And then Will was the lowest on Josh Allen, ranking him at 3. Why is he not number 1 for you, Will?
Explain yourself.
I think Buffalo, it'll be interesting to see how they play this season. There's a lot of mouths to feed. And I just think that, some teams, they get figured out a little bit. And that's the feeling I'm starting to get with Buffalo, is that maybe teams are starting to figure them out a little bit. mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's number one, but if you're asking me, when I wrote this list a week ago, I had him at 3. I could see him maybe moving up to 2 after some of the trades have happened already. So I think those quarterback trades in the AFC West kind of restack who I had at number 2. So I could see it. I mean, look on my top 3. There wasn't much of a difference, to be honest with you. It was hard for me to pick, but and then I'm always afraid he's going to get hurt because I love the way he plays, but I think sometimes with running, as he gets older, he's going to have to stop running as much. It's not worth, because if they lose him, they can't lose him, right? He's that valuable to the team that they cannot lose him. Mm-hmm. So, I knocked him down a couple of notches because I just think, I'm not sure what they're going to do at running back. I think they're going to feel pressure to have more of a running game. And I think teams are going to adjust more and more. And we'll see what happens.
All right, let's move on to our 1B, I guess. We got Justin Herbert. Jeff and Will both had Justin Herbert at 1. I have him at 2 and Zach at 3. So for me, Justin Herbert with the re-signing of Mike Williams, they're reassuring that connection there with Keenan Allen as 2 great wide receivers. We saw him put up numbers, his rookie year and last season, and I think he continues to improve on that. Austin Eckler, they got a great running game going for them as well as a good offensive line. So these are all positives to me. He's in a division now where you're going to have to put up 30 points a game if you want to win, going up against Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, and Derek Carr. You're not going to be able to have bad games. I think, easy. He's been great. I want to hear from Jeff first, though, and then we'll go to Will and then to Zach, because Zach had him last. But, Jeff, why is he number 1 for you?
Just their offense, to me, is just built for him to throw the ball. Either to all the receivers that they have, like you just said, Williams, Keenan Allen, and then also to Austin Eckler, man. When you look at Eckler, you think he's a great running back, but the thing is just him coming out of the backfield as a receiver. He's just got so many options. And if they get a stud tight end, Jared Cook was actually not bad this past season, but I think if they find somebody else, he's just going to be slinging the ball all over the place. And if the defense actually gets better to where they're able to create turnovers finally and get the ball back in his hands, that offense is going to be a terror in the AFC West and just in the AFC alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so that was mine. He doesn't run.
I'm with you on that, Jeff. And part of the reason why I got him at 1A was not only does he's already proven himself, but the Chargers got $43 million in cap space. So even if they add another offensive lineman, they can get a good backup running back number 2 that can complement Eckler out of the backfield. They could probably get another wide receiver, right? And so I actually think their offense gets way more dangerous next year. And I think Jeff's point is this offense is designed to throw. They're in that dome. They know they don't, with the changes in that division, they know they need to win as many games as they have to win because they don't want to go on the road. If I'm the Chargers, I don't want to go on the road in the playoffs. I want to be the number 1 seed. I don't want to go to Denver. I don't want to go to Kansas City or Buffalo. So I just think that offense is ready to click. And look, if we were picking Super Bowl winners right now for next year, the Chargers would be my team to pick right now. It's all lined up. They got money. They could move that. They could move a draft pick. Their draft picks right now. Do like kind of the Rams playbook, right? Start getting rid of draft picks because you got that cap space and you got him on his rookie contract. So if you're going to adjust the defense, you're going to add more weapons on offense. Now's the year to do it for the Chargers.
Yeah, and there's a stacked AFC West. They're going to have to do something if they want to even make the playoffs. They're a fringe playoff team this year, and Justin Herbert finishes the quarterback 2, I'm fairly certain. So he fits right back in, Zach. You're the lowest on Justin Herbert. Why'd you have him at 3?
Yeah, it's not like really him. It's me. It's like it's not so much that I really think that Justin Herbert is like the 3rd best. I think it's so close between him and Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion, that really it was just that morning or that day I was ranking the players. That's how much of a split difference I think there is between them. You guys make an awesome case for him even being the number one, like 5,000 passing yards. He's on an offense that's not afraid to go for it every fourth down. Now playing in a division like you guys mentioned earlier, like you're going against Russell Wilson and you're going against Patrick Mahomes twice a year now. Raiders are no joke too. So you'd imagine there's gonna be a ton of offense for the Chargers. So yeah, it's tough for me. It's Patrick Mahomes, just a more known commodity.
Yeah.
And having number one, going with Josh Allen was just kind of, he just stood out to me. So, but I can see it him finishing number one.
Talk about Patrick Mahomes. That transitions us into our third quarterback, which is Patrick Mahomes. Zach and Will at 2, me and Jeff at 3. Patrick Mahomes, people's like, oh, Patrick Mahomes had a down year last year. He finished as a QB4, and he finished as a QB4 the year before that. So this is definitely right around that range of outcomes, the top 5 for sure. He'll definitely be up there for me. I think they will bring in a running back in free agency. The offensive line was much improved. Tyreek Hill is still great. They re-signed Josh Gordon. I'm hoping for a little bit more out of him. I'm a big Josh Gordon fan. I hope they can squeeze a little bit out of him. But, they might bring in another veteran wide receiver, a guy who wants to come compete, a guy who wants to win. And this kind of, as Zach said, Patrick Mahomes is a known commodity. He's an amazing quarterback. He's a guy you're always going to want to have your fantasy football on your fantasy football teams. He's going to put up big numbers. Zach, you want to talk a little bit more about Patrick Mahomes? You already touched on him a little bit, but
yep, you just talk about the ceiling and the players around him. At this point, the age with Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, again, another guy that's looked at as like a down season, but really he was still really good for PPR purposes. So you look at Patrick Mahomes and that he's electric. He has multi-5 passing touchdown games last season. And I still think this offense is great. And you mentioned if they bring in some help at the running back position, get an actual solid running back there, even if you pair him up with CEH or whatever, Darrell Williams, just bring in a presence in the running game that allows the offense to open up for Patrick Mahomes. And maybe you get a little help at the wide receiver position. Obviously, Mecole Hardman is not the answer. So with a pretty deep wide receiver class here, you never know. They could take a shot on a playmaker because obviously this year has proven that you need to have super dynamic playmakers that can just stretch the field at any given time. And who better than Patrick Mahomes to be the quarterback for that?
Yeah, for sure. Will, what are your thoughts on Patrick Mahomes? You had him at 2.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs are going to get him more help. They're going to have to. I think they need another wide receiver. I think they're going to go do it, especially now. I mean, defense. Look, in the AFC West, if you average only giving up 30 points a game this season, you'll be doing well.
Right.
So it's all in on offense, right? So I wouldn't be surprised that the Chiefs draft a wide receiver, and then I wouldn't be surprised they also sign a veteran. And I think that's great for Mahomes.
Yeah, I agree. And as I said, Josh Gordon, he's gonna make a comeback. Yeah. This is his year. Trust. This is Josh Gordon's year. As long as he can make it through an entire offseason, I think that'll probably be his first offseason in 7 years. That he's actually been able to spend with the team. So we don't know what he will be. Jeff, what are your thoughts on Patrick Mahomes? You had him at 3, just like me.
That was precisely it. It was just that second wide receiver, the true wide receiver 2. Like you, rooting for Josh Gordon, but it just got predictable, I think, and it caught up with him at the end where, it's like we're going to try to shut down Tyreek Hill. We're going to try to shut down Travis Kelce. And it was just like, we're going to make Pringle beat us. We're going to make Hardman beat us. So they have another guy that can actually be a true threat. That offense is primed to just kind of be a even scarier version of what it already is. And talking about the running back, I actually like Jerick McKinnon in that offense, man. He was, I would say, their number one running back. I was mad when they would put CEH back in. I was like, just leave McKinnon in there, man.
Mhm.
I mean, he was spry. He was strong. He was everything that I think Kyle Shanahan thought he was going to be when they picked him
Yeah.
up for the Niners. He was healthy. That was the biggest thing. So, I think they need a big, strong running back as well to pair with McKinnon. Some guy to where when they are 5 yards from the goal line, they can give it to him and just have him pound it. Williams does not seem to be that guy. He is more of a plotter and without power. CEH, he's just too small. So, I wouldn't mind someone like I know Denver's not going to do it, but I wouldn't mind seeing what Melvin Gordon, somebody like that, would do in that offense.
Oof.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I had a projection Leonard Fournette going to the Chiefs. I thought that would be a good fit there. But let's move on to our quarterback 4, where we have another tie. This is the last tie we have out of all our rankings. But so for our 4A, we got Joe Burrow. Will, Jeff, and Zach have Burrow at 5. And I have him at 7. Joe Burrow finished as a quarterback 7 this past year. The offensive line will get better. The wide receivers are going to probably stay the same. I don't think they upgrade at that position. CJ Uzomah is a free agent, so they'll probably bring someone in, whether it's him or they address that need. But to me, we've seen some quarterbacks struggle. This is Joe Burrow's 3rd year, but this is really his 2nd year because of that ACL injury. So we've seen, defenses, as Will talks about this all the time, defenses start to figure out your offense, and then when that happens, you have to be able to adapt. I think they'll still have a great season. This is nothing against Joe Burrow or the Bengals, but to me, I think Jamar Chase probably had, at his ceiling, finishing, top 4. I don't think he's going to be 1. T. Higgins, he's a great wide receiver, and I like Tyler Boyd as well. But to me, I think they probably are around that area where I think he'll probably have another 4,600-yard, 30-something touchdowns. And to me, I think there's a couple other guys that have a little bit higher ceiling that I did have ranked ahead of him. But for you guys, Zach, we'll start with you. Why do you have him at 5?
So this one is, I think, subject to change because this is another one of those where I was like really struggling with the position I had him at 5, to be totally honest. However, if you look at what he did in fantasy playoffs last year, it's hard not to just give him a bump with the idea that he's so young, surrounded by other young players who are cemented in there. So it's like you're bringing back the same cast of characters. You still have cap to build on the team. You can build in the draft. This team can only get better, in my opinion. And Joe Burrow has shown if he can just stay healthy, he just takes, leaps and bounds of improvement. Like the way he even built his name, the way he became Joe Burrow was just blowing up out of nowhere. So maybe we need to give him a little more credit. We go so hard against these young quarterbacks, don't really give them a chance too much. We kind of limit their ceiling kind of within like 2 or 3 seasons and go, this is the player that they are. When I think Joe Burrow has yet to even ascend to his full potential. I mean, you look at what he did, 4 touchdowns, back-to-back games in the 2 games needed him the most in the fantasy playoffs. So I can see for that reason, a lot of Joe Burrow managers going into the season, maybe reaching for him with that like nostalgic feel. So it's kind of where I think, that I think the spot where we all kind of have him is pretty solid in my opinion.
Yeah, in that range somewhere. Will, what are your thoughts on Joe Burrow? Are you worried about defenses figuring out this Cincinnati Bengals offense?
Part of me wanted to rank him higher. I mean, honestly, I was almost thinking about putting him at 3. But I think for a lot of us, it's not Burrow's, it's the Bengals. We have a hard time believing that the Bengals can be consistently good. Their ownership, maybe they've changed, but you watch a team for 20 years and you see a disaster of ownership, like Detroit. You just don't give them the benefit of the doubt. But if they're really committed to winning football, Burrow's at 5 could be a real undervalue. I mean, if they go all in, they got cap space, they got draft picks. If they go get, a complimentary, another wide receiver, a real wide receiver too, right? And they get that defense going a little bit. Because if Burrow was on the Steelers, would we really have him at 5 or 7? mean, it's to me, it's the Bengals. It's just trying to get over that. It's the Bengals, and we're all. I think in the back of our minds, like this could all fall apart, and they would go back to being the Bengals we all know and love, the 3-14 team.
Mm-hmm. It is tough. They have that history there. It's like if he was on the Browns.
Oh yeah,
it is. I think he'll have a good
I was just
season.
going to say a lot of people have T. Higgins and Jamar Chase ranked in the top 24, or at least top 25. So if you look at it from that angle, there's obviously the person delivering the ball to those guys, supporting two. If you can support two top 24 wide receivers, just by math, you don't have to be a genius to figure this out, that the guy that throws it to him is going to, have double the amount of value. So
there you go, Jeff. What are your thoughts on Joe Burrow before we move on here?
And that's the thing. I'm not a Bengals believer by any means until they've made me a believer. And it's not necessarily about teams figuring out Joe Burrow. It's them figuring out their receivers. I mean, just like Justin Jefferson, I wanted to see what he was going to do in the second year, and he proved it. To me, Jamar Chase is better than Justin Jefferson. So I want to see how.
I agree. I'm with you, Jeff. You're not alone.
Yeah, exactly. And T. Higgins has done nothing but get better as well. And still, Tyler Boyd is really, what do you call it? He's kind of overshadowed by those guys, but he's a very good possession receiver, man. Now, if you happen to throw in some sort of tight end that is, somebody that's a little bit better than CJ Uzomah, I mean, man, these dudes can be really, really dangerous. And they got a quarterback, just like, the Patriots were really nobody until Tom Brady started to do what he was doing, So it's one of those things. It could be their time. Now, I'm not putting them in the Super Bowl again next season, but this offense is very high-powered, and they have a very serviceable defense as well. So, and I'm looking in the AFC North, other than, with the jury still being out on the Steelers, I really don't see who stops them. The Ravens, there's questions there. Browns, there's always questions there. They can go ahead, they're like the Eagles back in the day when they had Michael Vick and had the whole dream team, and then it always falls apart. So they are kind of like the most stable team right now in that AFC North. So, I'm impressed by what they've put together on that offense, and I don't see how ownership really messed that up. Only thing that stops this is somebody getting hurt, which, and being so youthful, that possibly doesn't happen.
Let's stick with this stability theme when we talk about our next guy. Our consensus 4B is going to be Aaron Rodgers. Will and Jeff both have him at 4. I have him at 5, and Zach has him all the way down at 9. To me, Aaron Rodgers, he outside of being injured, he's never finished outside the top 9 before. 9 was his lowest rank. Besides his 2 seasons where he didn't play all the games that he didn't finish there. I think that with Devante Adams coming back, I think they will, if they don't have any wide receivers outside Devante Adams and Randall Cobb right now, so they'll have to bring in someone. I'm hoping it's going to be someone who can catch the ball. No more Marquez Valdez-Scantling being out there wide open and dropping balls. That's not happening anymore. They're going to bring someone in. They're going to go all out this year. And I think, Aaron Rodgers, if he ran the ball a little more, he is older. So this is why he's not quite, that top 4 for me. But if he did run the ball a little more, I think that's kind of what's keeping him out, is the fact that he doesn't. So Jeff and Will, you both have him at 4. Anything you want to add to Aaron Rodgers other than the fact he's been there, done that?
That's the thing. Now the distractions are gone. If he's signed, like you were saying, they've got Adams. I got a feeling that they are going to bring in, and they're going to go ahead and say, look, now that we've got you signed, we want you to help us put this thing together. Who do you want? I can see a Chris Godwin. I can see somebody like that. Hell, who knows? Maybe Amari Cooper. Somebody's going to get in that second spot, man, for this year. Now that they see what happened with the Rams, it's that whole thing. We're putting this thing together. getting him another weapon, a true weapon, and I can see him really going to work this season. I mean, there's no more excuses that he could have. Now
Look,
it's like
with
this
that
is your
with,
time. You've got
with that
everything.
con-
I've given you.
with that
Go ahead,
contract, he's the head coach.
Yeah.
He is.
Yep.
He's the head. Let's put all bullshit aside. Aaron Rodgers is the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, and you're going to see it this year. If they run the ball at all, I'll be shocked. They're gonna. I think Jeff's right. They're gonna go get Amari Cooper because if Dallas cuts him, they're gonna go get Amari Cooper, and they're gonna go all in. They're looking at the rest of the division. Do you really trust the Lions? Do you really trust the Bears? And I think once the Vikings saw that Rodgers was staying, I think ownership has said, okay, with the new GM and the coach, you're right, let's blow it up. Because the rumors say about who's on the trading block from the Vikings, I mean, they're talking about Thielen, they're talking about Cook, they're talking about Kendricks. It's going into
Everyone who's not named Justin Jefferson should
right
be on the trade block.
on the trading block. So if that's the case, there's 6 wins right there.
Mhm.
And look, the problem for Aaron Rodgers is he better deliver this year. He better win a Super Bowl this year, or it's going to get ugly very quickly.
Mhm. I
So
agree.
that's why I put him at number 4. I think he throws 4 touchdowns a game.
Yeah. Zach, what are your thoughts? Having him down there all the way at 9.
Yep, a little bit of a personal bias, in my opinion. I have massive Aaron Rodgers fatigue at this point. Me is just like a soap opera. I don't really like tuning into. I'm glad it's over now, to be totally honest. It's the guys that are just above him that it especially with the Russell Wilson trade. It just so happens to be he's at 9. I think just the way it fell, I'd rather have a lot of guys we haven't mentioned yet. I won't spoil it, but some of the guys that we haven't mentioned yet, I just personally on my fantasy team, I always value running quarterbacks for the most part. Again, it's going to vary slightly depending on your scoring format in your leagues. There may be scenarios where Aaron Rodgers is much higher. If you kind of take out, there's a lot of leagues that like nullify the rushing kind of cheat code quarterbacks get. So if in that case, it could switch. But overall, I think PPR is pretty popular with the rushing stat. So for me, there's a few guys that I rather have. But you guys are absolutely right. I think that they finally were like, Aaron Rodgers, this is it. I mean, there's not like a great quarterback draft class here. There's not too many moves they could have made. But I think we're also giving maybe a little too much credit to the Green Bay Packers organization. This still is the team that it's not like before they were like, we don't really trust this Aaron Rodgers guy. We're not too sure. Maybe we'll make him sweat it out. We'll draft Jordan Love and a fullback, and we'll push it, and then give him $200 million after everything starts to expire on the defensive side. They got to pay a lot of guys on defense too. So from a fantasy perspective, if the defense takes a step backwards, then Aaron Rodgers should be on the field on offense more, and in theory, give you more fantasy opportunities. But the cliff comes for every quarterback. Not everyone is Tom Brady, and I think these guys have aged pretty well. But who knows? Aaron Rodgers could see that cliff soon.
Yeah, and we're going to move on to the next quarterback. Zach was talking about he wants a quarterback who runs the ball. Well, we got a quarterback who runs the ball up next, Lamar Jackson. He finished as a QB1 before, QB10 this year with the injuries. He was a QB15. So if he's healthy, Lamar Jackson, he's the Ravens offense for sure. J.K. Dobbins will be back. Gus Edwards will be back. This Ravens running game will transform back into what it was. And as we said, with all the value, depending on your touchdown scoring, whether you get the extra 2 points for a rushing touchdown, or even if you don't, and it's just the rushing yards when Lamar Jackson's putting up 70 yards a game on the ground, that's going to be the difference between, a guy like Lamar Jackson and some guys that we haven't talked about yet. And this is why I'm lower on him. Zach and Will have him at 6, and Jeff and I have him at 8. I am a little worried about the way he plays and that injury, and I think that's what's hesitant for me. If I could guarantee him a full 16 games, I'd definitely put him higher. I just can't do that. But I drafted Lamar last year. Maybe that's another reason why he's a little lower down, because he got hurt the year I drafted him. But Lamar Jackson, running upside. No one beats him at that. So for me, he's going to be a top 10 quarterback for sure. Zach, what are your thoughts on Lamar Jackson? You were just hyping up the rushing. quarterbacks, here's your chance to keep going.
Yeah, and if there's going to be an offense that you want to target for the rushing quarterback, it's the team that can just cycle any quarterback out there and just change the jersey number, and then boom, you have just whoever was out there, Huntley, or wasn't it Josh Johnson made a quick trip in.
Yeah.
So this offense is clearly designed for Lamar's skill set. Mark Andrews has blossomed into the tight end one. However, you lose Hollywood Brown to Fortnite, so that's kind of tough. And then you hope Rashard Bateman can mature. I mean, he struggled to reel in one touchdown last year. So from a health perspective, he had a multi-injury season last year. I can see why you're kind of nervous about that, but he's Lamar Jackson, man. On average, he's QB7 the last 3 seasons. So if you got him at 6 or right around that area, I feel like that's pretty safe.
Yeah, I agree on that. Will, what are your thoughts on Lamar Jackson? You also have him at 6.
I'll be honest with you. I'm a little higher on their wide receiver core if he's healthy, and that's an if. But I think that wide receiver core, I know it's the offense and all that, but switching quarterbacks, it's not really conducive to putting up good numbers each and every week, right? So, yeah, I think if I look at a roster that maybe has good talent at wide receiver and the quarterback's coming back, or there's, in this case, coming back. Yeah, I like a lot of Baltimore's players going into this draft this year. I think they'll be undervalued, and you can probably get some decent guys in the 4th or 5th round or 6th or 7th that may outperform their draft slot.
Yeah, for sure. And Baltimore does have that need, so that's going to be a place where guys are going to have the opportunity to come out and play. Jeff, what are your thoughts on Lamar Jackson? Why do you have him ranked at 8 with me?
Yeah, definitely his running ability. I'm a little bit higher than I usually am on their receiver core, especially with Mark Andrews just tearing stuff up last year. But I never put a lot of stock into Hollywood Brown. He's, here for 2 games, gone for 5 games. They do not draft wide receivers well, so the, jury's still out on Bateman. But I think as well, there's a spot there where if they happen to get an Antonio Brown, if they get somebody else that might actually open up that offense a little bit more. Because that's the thing. If you're spread out, Jackson's going to kill you. Lamar Jackson is just, if you're trying to play a man or something like that, you're not going to be able to stop that dude. And I think that's what they're starting to realize, that we need more weapons, more guys to where they're going to have to pay attention to. They got it with Andrews now. They kind of have it with Hollywood Brown. If you get another name in there to where you have to really have somebody watch that guy, he's going to go crazy. So that's why I always keep him in the top 10. I'm just hoping he stays healthy. That's the only thing. That's my only drawback on a lot of the running quarterbacks is just, the health factor. All it takes is one good hit, and it's, we're having problems for the rest of the season.
That's the risk you take. The upside's there. The upside's definitely there for Lamar Jackson. Let's move on to our quarterback 7. We have Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. I have him at 6. I'm very high on Dak Prescott. Jeff is the lowest. Jeff currently has him at 9. But for me, I think, getting this whole Amari Cooper situation figured out is going to be big. I don't think he's on the team. I think they're talking with Michael Gallup currently. Everything that I've heard that this is going to get done, that deal's going to get done. Michael Gallup's going to be back. I love Michael Gallup, big Michael Gallup fan, so I do like that. Then they have CeeDee Lamb is also another great weapon, franchise tag, Dalton Schultz. You have that 2 great running backs, and then when you have a guy like Trayvon Diggs who's going to give you, 8+ interceptions, that's also great for a fantasy quarterback. And to me, Dak Prescott has done nothing but impress. He's always been good with the ball, not throwing too many interceptions, which is good for fantasy, especially if you play in a league that penalizes you a lot for interceptions. Dak Prescott's going to be important that way. He put up almost 4,500 yards last year, and the last year he was healthy. Before that, he was at 4,900 yards. This offense, I think they realize Zeke, he's not quite the Zeke he used to be, and I think they're just going to let Dak Prescott kind of go. We saw that in games where last year when they played Washington, Dak Prescott was out of the game come, I think, the third quarter because he'd already put up his 4 touchdowns and 330 yards. So if the Cowboys really do commit to Dak, they let him run his offense, I think that's the ceiling is extremely high with the weapons that he has. My only concern is the fact that, it's Dallas, and I don't like Dallas. I don't trust Mike McCarthy. So for Jeff, you have him ranked the lowest. We'll come to you last, but I'm assuming that's going to be his whole argument. But Zach, what are your thoughts on Dak Prescott? I think you have him at 7.
Yeah. So this is probably the most agreed player between me and the rest of you. So this is like I guess we can all agree on this point. But if you look at what he did to start the season, it was like just a barrage of 3 and 4 touchdown passing games, and then he finished the season doing the same thing. Like you mentioned, he actually got benched because he just absolutely just set the world on fire in 2 quarters. And Dak Prescott is one of those guys that has that ability that kind of doesn't really get mentioned as much as the no-look pass from Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson's rushing ability. A lot of people, because they think it's the Cowboys, and people look at the Cowboys like, oh, we're kind of sick of these guys at this point. So I think Dak doesn't get the respect he really deserves as far as his ability to really just come out there and just set it on fire within the first 30 minutes of the game. And when you have a player like that on your fantasy team, it's like, it's always a nice gamble to have. Be like, oh, I just won my matchup in the first 2 quarters because Dak Prescott threw 4 touchdowns, So, and offense is definitely going to at least improve or stay status quo. I don't see how they can really take a step backwards. And I think CeeDee Lamb is still maturing. So,
yeah, for sure. I agree. As you said, if they just stay the course, that's great for Dak. He finished last year as the quarterback 8. And as you said, there's room for improvement. So I think quarterback 7 is where we have him ranked. I fully agree with that. Will, you also have him ranked at 7. So obviously you agree with this pick right here. Any thoughts being from Dallas?
I think the biggest thing last season that happened for the Cowboys is I think it became Dak's team at the end of the season. I think going into the season, they weren't sure, was it Zeke? Was it the wide receivers? But I think Zeke underperformed. And I don't think there's any expectation, even within the organization, that they can run the ball with him and dominate the game. I think everybody realizes they have to build around Dak. And I think that's good for his fantasy. I mean, I want, from a fantasy perspective, I want Dak to be the lead in Dallas. So we'll see, but it also makes me, I'll be honest with you, it makes me a little nervous because part of their numbers is just the NFC East is just so bad, right? I mean, honestly, as a division, it's just so bad. If any one of those teams starts to improve, I could see Dak dropping down into like 11, 12, 13 range by the end of the season. So, but just living here, you just know it's Dak's team now. There's no doubt he drives the offense.
Yeah, Dak actually had a 13 and a 15-point game against the Washington and the Giants last year. So they did kind of get to him a little bit, put some pressure on him, but he still, even with that, finished as QB8. So Jeff, all right, let's hear your reason against having him within your top 7.
Well, one, like you said, it is the Cowboys. There's always something going on. I think CeeDee Lamb is still growing, but he did disappear in some games last year. And then there was uncertainty about Kellen Moore not being there. I didn't know if that was going to hurt Dak. Maybe a better offensive coordinator gets in there and makes him a better quarterback. So those were the things that I was looking at is just a bunch of uncertainty. There are other quarterbacks that I'm a little bit more certain about where they are and what they have and what they're going to do. Didn't know if they were going to re-sign Amari Cooper, which it doesn't look like they are. And a lot of those big games, Amari Cooper had big games as well. So that's what I was looking at. At times, it looked like Dak was actually forcing the ball to him. So, that was my other thing. I'm like, I want to see if CeeDee Lamb, if Cooper leaves, can CeeDee Lamb step into that number 1 role? Is it going to go to Gallup? How's Gallup going to look after coming back after his injury. So there's just a lot of things, that were uncertain, and you never know what the hell Jerry Jones is going to do or say or whatever else. So that was, and you can never trust Mike McCarthy. So that's another thing. That was it. It's just the Cowboys. Too much uncertainty. The one thing that is certain is I do think Dak is always a serviceable quarterback, top 10 quarterback in fantasy, but there's always some other junk surrounding that team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's move on to the next player who is the consensus ranked 8. He's only the consensus ranked 8 because when we did these rankings, there were some questions about him. Zach and I got this guy ranked at number 4. We're going to be talking about Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is another rushing quarterback. He finished at quarterback 3 2 years ago, quarterback 10 last year because he did miss 3 games. So that does hurt a little bit. The Cardinals the past few years have always fallen off. But we will see how they retool. They have to bring back their running backs. They have to bring in some wide receiver help. But Kyler Murray is still Kyler Murray. No matter who you got out there, if there's no one out there, Kyler Murray will just run the ball. To me, I think that he's top 4. And those guys in the top 4 to me they're interchangeable, but I'm not really putting anyone else in that category with Herbert, Mahomes, and Allen other than Kyler Murray. Zach, what else you have to add to that? Because you also have him at 4.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said about that, like kind of cluster of guys. So that's kind of where like tier-based drafting kind of comes into play and maybe your own personal preference. But yeah, Kyler Murray, man, he's got the explosive upside again, and the rushing ability really can't be overlooked. And even if this team starts off, like super hot again, like they did last year, and fizzles out, which they most likely do, or most likely will rather, it's like you're still going to get explosive quarterback play for like 8 weeks, and then maybe you can try to pivot from there or something. But I wouldn't reach for Kyler. But I think what's going to happen is I think they're going to see that DeAndre Hopkins is aging. Christian Kirk probably go elsewhere. Zach Ertz probably go elsewhere. Maybe James Conner or Chase Edmonds. I don't know if they bring both back so you could see like a narrative where people are like, man, Cardinals are really looking down, and Kyler kind of falls where he becomes like a draft day value. Mm-hmm. But to me, he's still, he's a stud. You look in the back the last 3 years, QB6, QB3, and QB10. He finished top 10 even with, at least this sleeper scoring format. So,
yeah, I mean, he's not a guy I love. Personally, if I could have this guy on my fantasy team or one of the other 3, I'm going to pick them because, I'd rather cheer for them. So maybe that's the reason why you don't want Kyler Murray. He's kind of a baby. Deleting, I can't delete all my Cardinals photos. I'm going to have them all back. I'm not happy, whatever. He's not a leader in that locker room. So, there's reasons to not like Kyler Murray. And if you want to enjoy playing fantasy football and, you're like Jeff and you don't like Kyler Murray, you're like me, you don't like Kyler Murray, probably won't be on your team. I'm just assuming Jeff doesn't like Kyler Murray, being a Seahawks fan, but
I do. I really do. It's just I like consistency, and it seems like when DeAndre Hopkins gets hurt, when AJ Green can't be AJ Green that he was back 15 years ago. When Rondale Moore isn't, he's electric, but not ready for prime time. When you're going against Aaron Donald and going against the San Francisco 49er defense, even if there's a resurgence with the Seattle Seahawks defense, he's got a lot of stuff stacked against him. And that's the only thing. There's some other guys that I think would be more consistent because I know what they have around them right now. And just that nosedive that they take during the playoffs, man, especially against the Rams, I was like, hell, he's got to face the same defense next season, possibly without Hopkins, possibly without Christian Kirk, possibly without Connor, Chase Edmonds. He might get in about 4 games. You don't know what you have there. These guys always get hurt. When it's grouped together, yeah, they're hard to stop. But when pieces always continue to fall off, and I don't know what I'm going to get when I need it. I like guys I kind of know what I'm going to get from. So
Yeah, it's fair. Anything you want to add to that, Will, before we move on?
I'll be honest with you, until he proves me wrong now, he's undraftable for me because he is consistent.
Pew, pew.
No, he's undraftable for me because he's consistent when you need him most. The whole point of fantasy football is to win your championship.
Mhm.
And every 3 years in a row during fantasy playoffs, he bombs. And it is consistent. And it'd be one thing if it was his first or second year. This is 3 years in a row that he tails off at the most important weeks. Not touching him. Won't touch him, especially after this. Was he trying to force his way out? There's a lot of bad blood there. I think Arizona, there's always a team that goes from playoffs to the bottom. Arizona's that team.
Whoa. They got Drew Lock in that division now, so they can be second worst. They can't be the worst, but
Drew Lock is not going to see the field. I would rather have Geno Smith out there than Drew Lock at this point.
Let's move on. I'll introduce the guy and then I'll let Jeff go off on a rant. We're going to be talking about Russell Wilson as our consensus ranked 9. Zach and I both had the chance to adjust our rankings. I did not give Jeff or Will the chance to adjust their rankings after the news broke just a couple days ago. But yeah, I'm the lowest on him at 9, and Zach and Will got him at 8. All right, Jeff, go off. Let us know how Russell Wilson is going to do in Denver.
Russ is moving up to 5 for me.
Ooh.
5.
Pew, pew, pew.
Jerry Jeudy, Cortland, forgot his last
Sutton.
name.
Sutton.
Sutton
about Cortland.
Exactly. Albert Okabuka, I don't know what the hell his last name is.
I just call him Albert OK. Like I was responding to so many comments.
Albert OK.
I'm like Albert OK.
They always have some off the radar wide receiver that's able to, pop out of nowhere. Tim, what's his name? Patrick. Somebody
KJ
like
Hamler.
That. KJ Hamler. They got a hell of a running game with my man that I'm probably keeping in my leagues. What's his name? Young man.
Devante Williams.
Devante Williams. Devante. What a name. And even if Melvin Gordon sticks around, man, that's a hell of a supporting cast. As much as I love my Seahawks, Russ has never been surrounded with that much talent at one time. Even when Marshawn was there, you had Doug Baldwin. The other receivers, you really didn't know who they were until Tyler Lockett got there. So that's the thing. He's got a complete offense and a decent offensive line. Man, sky's the limit. He needs to produce.
Yeah, he definitely does need to produce. Will, what are your thoughts on Russ being in Denver?
I would have moved Russ up to 6 on my list had I had the trade happen before I did my rankings. I do think the sky's the limit, and I wouldn't be surprised if they won the AFC West. I think he can put up numbers. He can stay healthy, and he picks up that offense, and he gets chemistry. And the one thing about Wilson is we all know he's a hard worker. He takes this very seriously. Like, there's no bullshit. He's in
not Kyler Murray.
No, not Kyler Murray. No, not at all. And so I'm just saying, I think Russ, I would have moved him up to 6 on my list and put him in front of Lamar and Dak. Had this trade happen before.
Yeah. For me, I moved him into my top 10. He was not in my top 10 before. And he actually kicked Trevor Lawrence out of my top 10, so I won't get to talk about him today. But
what?
That's for a different show. Zach, what are your thoughts on Russell Wilson?
Listen, we'll let him slide. We'll let that one slide. Maybe that was a typo. He might have got.
No.
I have.
Nope.
Yeah, Sam Darnold ahead of him.
No, Russ was 11.
You disrespect Tua like that? Unbelievable. I had Russell Wilson at 10 prior to this trade, and then swapped him with Matt Stafford. So I got Matt Stafford down at 10 and Russell Wilson at 8. Russell Wilson he's like a top 10 quarterback like every single season, I think, since he's been in the NFL. So you kind of like you fall wherever I think it's kind of however you think Russell Wilson is going to do based off of age, a new surrounding, a team that has like really good running backs. So it's like, and maybe are we putting too much of this narrative that these wide receivers are so great in Denver that they just haven't had the quarterback to open it up? That has taken such like a turn for Russell Wilson where people are like, imagine the opportunities of what these guys are going to do. And it certainly could come to fruition. But I think I'm just tempering expectations that this is going to still be a run heavy team. And wide receivers that are good. But again, Cortland Sutton has always been this overhyped player, in my opinion. Tim Patrick is kind of just like a guy at this point. And Jerry Jeudy really is looking like, besides Jalen Reagor, I guess, not the best pick in that first round of draft.
Yeah.
So a lot of things that they have to prove to live up to this hype, in my opinion. So I'm just going to kind of base it off that and move Russell down. Just, I think 8 is safe, in my opinion. So
yeah, I had him at 9. Kind of similar hesitations that Zach had. To me, I don't think that this Denver, they might have better depth than the Seahawks had, but you can't recreate what Tyler Lockett and Russell Wilson had when it came to that red zone. This Broncos wide receivers, they won't have that timing and that chemistry because Tyler knew exactly where Russ was going to put it, and Russ put it exactly where Tyler wanted it. They were both like watching them play in the red zone was nothing sort of spectacular. You put Devante Adams and Aaron Rodgers in that category, but I think those two pairs right there, they're the best to watch in the red zone when it comes down to it. So yeah, I'm tempering expectations with, I think that's still going to be great. Moved him into my top 10, put him at 9. So moved him up 2 spots just with this change of scenery. And I do like the fact that they do have a better offensive line and a running game that he won't have to put the entire team on his shoulders. So, for me, just temper your expectations a little bit, not moving them up to 5 or 6 quite yet. But let's move on to our consensus. We're going to move on to our consensus 10, who I am actually the lowest on, as I do not have this guy in my top 10. But Matthew Stafford is the next quarterback. Jeff is the highest on Matthew Stafford, has him at the quarterback 6, which would be, I guess, 7 if you move Russ ahead of him. But to me,
that was before the trade. Exactly.
Yeah, that was before the trade. He had him at 6. So now he's at 7. To me, Matthew Stafford, he's a good quarterback, but I can't see him being any better than he was this year. I can't see Cooper Kupp doing any better than he was this year. Maybe they bring Odell back. If they bring him back, he's definitely not going to be ready for the beginning of the season. And Robert Woods, there's talk he might be a cap casualty. I really don't think they should. The offensive line is going to get worse. Andrew Whitworth probably retired. And then you have that whole situation to figure out. The defense is losing some pieces, so they probably won't get the same turnovers, puts them in a worse spot. I think there's only room for regression for Matthew Stafford, and for that reason, I have him just outside my top 10 at quarterback 12. Jeff, you're the highest on him. Let's hear your thoughts. Why is he your quarterback 6?
1, because of Cooper Kupp. 2, Sean McVay. If it is Sean McVay, he has an eye for receivers. He's one of those coaches that can pick a receiver. Van Jefferson, I think, is improving. I think they'll go out in this draft again and possibly find somebody if they don't pull in a veteran. He's going to find a way to continue to make Matthew Stafford a viable quarterback in the league, a top 10 quarterback in the league. Normally, I would have probably had him at 10 or 9, but because of the fact that he does have Cooper Kupp, which I think Cooper Kupp is going to continue, maybe not surpass what he did last season, but he is the real deal. Once you have one of the top, I won't say he's the best, but one of the top wide receivers at your disposal, that's automatically going to bump a guy up for me, and that's what Stafford does have in Cup. And then he's got a head coach who is remaining in place. That's the one thing that scares me about Russell as well. He's got a new head coach as well. He's got a coach that he is on that mental telepathy type thing where Sean McVay is going to make sure he does everything to make Matthew Stafford successful.
Will, what are your thoughts?
I'm not the biggest Matthew Stafford fan, so I felt compelled to try to check my bias after that Super Bowl game and say, okay, he deserves top 10. I don't know if there's a big difference between the 10th quarterback and the 15th quarterback right now. So, but you got to give him his respect, and you got to figure another year in their system. I wouldn't be surprised if all the wide receivers are back. I don't think Odell goes anywhere, and I think if anything they restructure with Woods, and they only get more dangerous, to be honest with you. Now the O-line could be the Achilles heels there, because Stafford's not the most mobile guy. So if he's getting pressure at his feet, especially at the middle, it can be a problem.
We saw what the pressure did to him last year, and that's where things got ugly. So a little concerned about that. Zach?
The interceptions were a big part of attributing to where he finished. I think if you take away some of those interceptions, he probably moves up the ranks as far as what he finished last year. But just to put it in perspective, like we were talking about, like the whole running quarterback thing, if you look at him and Josh Allen, like Matthew Stafford had 41 passing touchdowns, Josh Allen had 36, and Josh Allen had 15 interceptions, Matt Stafford had 17. So it's like you look at these guys and it's like massive difference in ranking there, with the passing numbers are in the favor of Matthew Stafford, and we have Josh Allen at 1 and Matthew Stafford at 10. So obviously that's the whole thing, like you were saying, relying on Cooper Kupp. And in my opinion, I mean, I love Cooper Kupp. I have Cooper Kupp in Dynasty, and it's served me well, but I don't see him repeating what we saw last year. I think, like you said, I think there's only room for aggression, which just kind of lowers Stafford's ceiling. I think there was a lot of things that were just magical about this whole season in general for the Rams. So banking on that magic to happen again, with all the rumors of McVay maybe like leaving and Aaron Donald potentially leaving, there's just like a weirdness about this team. And Matthew Stafford's older, and he's gonna sign probably a new deal. So I don't know. It's just, I think 10's perfect for Matt Stafford, I think.
Yeah, you had him at 10, and he's finished as our consensus 10. So definitely agree with that. Just a couple guys who did just miss a cut. Jeff had Deshaun Watson at 7. I think if Deshaun Watson was on a team right now where he was going to play for, I think he'd be in my top 10 for sure. I feel like Zach and Will would probably feel the same, whether he was, we were just 5. All a little.
Depending on landing spot, might be top 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd be in that tier to me with Kyler Murray, Mahomes, Herbert, and Allen.
Stop saying Kyler Murray.
I hate Kyler Murray, but he's in that tier. So he'd be in that tier for me. Zach said he had that kind of same tier, and if you're going to put him top 3, depending on where he goes, then he would be in that tier as well. Will has Ryan Tannehill at 9. I want to hear, why is Ryan Tannehill going to be in your top 10? Will?
Because I think they're going to move on from Julio Jones, and I think they're going to have to pay A.J. Brown, and I think they're going to go get another good wide receiver. And there are some very good wide receivers in free agency that are going to be available. And I think Tennessee's I think people want to play in Tennessee. It seems team seems a little crazy to me a little bit, especially watching the draft, that COVID draft, and I still don't know what's his name's son was doing standing in the corner with that full body suit on, but it just seems they got a decent vibe there, and they seem to play well for each other. And Tannehill's career got resurrected there. So I think next season, like I said, I don't know if there's really a big difference between, like, once you get down to 8, 9, 10, all the way through 15. I think it's a lot of breaks depending on the season, who stays healthy, when the schedule of games are, what the defenses look like in their division. And if you look at that South now, who's better than Tennessee in the South?
Well, according to Zach, Trevor
Go
Lawrence,
ahead,
Jaguars
Zach.
are.
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll get to Trevor Lawrence in a second.
Hey, look, Zach. If I had to go to 11, I probably would have had Trevor at 11 or 12 because I do think he's going to make a big
Oh
jump.
my God!
So hold on. We have one more
You-
person we need before we get to Trevor Lawrence. There's one more
Hey,
person we need to talk
guys,
about.
Is he your
One more.
cousin or
Yeah.
something?
One more person. We want to talk about Jalen Hurts. I have Jalen Hurts at 10. Zach, I saw your rankings. You have him at 11. He finished as the quarterback 12 last year, and he had 3,000 passing yards. 3,000. And we're talking about all these guys who have, 4,000 or 5,000 passing yards, and he was able to crack the top 12 with 3,000. He had 3,100, so it's not even like it was high 3,000s. It was low. He only had 16 passing touchdowns as well. I think the Eagles, their receiving group can't get worse, so that's automatically an upgrade there for me. This is the rushing quarterback upside. He's an amazing running quarterback with almost 800 yards. Zach, like I said, Zach just has him outside the top 10. To me, he's a guy I think does take that step in the passing game that elevates him into that top 10 status. Anything you want to add to that, Zach, before we move on to the controversial one?
Yeah, I think Jalen Hurts is the kind of the last of the real high explosive, high ceiling rushing quarterbacks in that kind of vicinity. I think if you kind of wait on quarterbacks, that might be your guy to look for in the not the later rounds, because obviously again he's a top 12 quarterback, but like you said, I think he can only take a step forward. They have 3 first-round picks, if I'm not mistaken, or at least 2 first-round picks,
They have 3
something like that.
first-round picks this year.
In a pretty deep wide receiver class, they got to hit on another wide receiver, or they got to hit on some offensive line help. I think if you really build around Jalen Hurts, I think he doesn't get the credit he deserves because of the lacking of the upside of passing. But not to go too hard with him, when you have that explosive player in the running game, quarterback, it just gives you that like advantage every time, every week, in and out.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Now we can talk about.
I just want to say real quick, because I was so upset with the Steelers that they did not draft him. Could you imagine him on the Steelers?
Yeah.
Yep.
That would have been a better situation for him to improve as a passer than it is in Philly, that's for sure. But yeah, let's talk about Trevor Lawrence now. I'm extremely bullish on Trevor Lawrence for now until the Jaguars screw up free agency, because they do have cap space. They should bring in weapons for their quarterback. Travis Etienne is coming back. They will be able to shore up the offensive line. They tagged Cam again. With James Robinson and Travis Etienne in the backfield, that's a really good backfield in my opinion. They bring back Chark and sign another wide receiver, whether it's a guy like Allen Robinson, bringing him back to Jacksonville. There's a couple other options. And to me, Trevor Lawrence, he's an amazing talent at quarterback. He's 22. I think he takes that, second-year leap that we've seen some quarterbacks be able to make. Urban Meyer isn't there anymore, so it's an automatic upgrade there. He finished as the quarterback 23 last year with Urban Meyer being his head coach for so long, and really no weapons because DJ Chark got hurt. Laviska Shenault was not there. He can't get any worse than he was last year too, so he'll improve. I think that everything's going to come together. I think Jacksonville's still not an amazing team. I think for fantasy value, Trevor Lawrence will have some. Will, you said you would have just put him outside your top 10. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Anything you want to add?
Look at Fantasy Pros rankings based on their points, right? They had him at 22. And if you look at the guys above him, so maybe 11's high, but I think he's top 15 at the end of the year so Carson Wentz and Heineke were ranked above him. Well, one of them's out of it. Roethlisberger's no longer there. Matt Ryan's no longer there. Garoppolo, God knows what's going to happen with Garoppolo. So yeah, maybe no worse than 15. I know.
I got him 18. No, 19 rather. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just trying to find where you had him at, Zach.
That's a massive jump.
I think he takes it.
You're hinging on just massive steps in that offense going forward with the wide receivers that were just so underwhelming. And it's only so much you can really do in one off season to jump up, like 12, 13 spots. I agree with you guys. I think they're going to take a step forward. Trevor Lawrence specifically, like I said earlier in the show, I think we don't give enough time to these young guys at quarterbacks. We kind of write them off so quickly now. But if they go Evan Neal with the number 1 overall pick and shore up that line, he seems like a pretty sure, first pick there. And you get those guys back healthy. I don't know about James Robinson. I'm not sure if he can do the same Cam Akers superhero recovery. So you might be just looking at ETN back there, but college teammates. So I can see him making the jump, but you guys are certainly very bullish on him.
Yeah, my whole thing is they have to bring back Chark because Chark was good when he was there at the beginning of the season, and they have to bring in another wide receiver. Because if they don't do that, then this jump is not going to happen, and this is a way too early thing. So I'm counting on Jacksonville doing something right for once. And that's a lot of faith. This is if I'm going to call my shot, I'm going to call it now. And if they don't do anything in free agency and they screw themselves over and they bring in no weapons and Laviska Shenault's their wide receiver 1 going into next year, then I'm just going to rearrange my rankings and Trevor Lawrence will not be in my top 10. But
let me ask you guys this.
Yeah.
And I hate to say this as a maybe former Seahawks fan, but if he gets a starting job, for me, I think I'm going with Trey Lance over Trevor Lawrence.
1,000%.
What do you think?
1,000,000%.
That's my guy here.
I got Trey Lance right after Jalen Hurts at 12. I don't want to spoil too much. I don't know if we're going to keep going with this, but
this is where we're this is the last guy we're talking about here.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, there you go. I'm with you, Jeff. Yeah, Trey Lance, that offense is
Yeah, I think Trey Lance has the rushing upside. So if he does get that job, then he would definitely be in that top 12 for me as well. Him and Trevor Lawrence, I think probably would be my 11 and 12. If the Jaguars are smart and they do what I said they need to do, then he will be. But if the Jaguars are the Jaguars and they screw everything up, then Trey Lance will be way ahead of Trevor Lawrence in my rankings. That's for sure. Any final comments on this? Anyone you guys want to bring up as a sleeper? Kirk Cousins almost made my top 10 as well. He's always hanging around, but
he's a good. Hey, look, there's someone. The fact that none of us even brought him up until right now, depending on where he's playing, it's probably 50-50 still with the Vikings, but depending on where he's playing, from a fantasy perspective, not NFL, just fantasy, if you got him as your number 1 quarterback late in your draft, I mean, he's going to finish top 12, top 13 unless he gets hurt. So,
put him in Carolina.
That's what I was going to say. It's a perfect.
I don't want him. I don't want him. And apparently we made an offer and you guys turned us down, and I'm happy that you did. But for fantasy-wise, you give him Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, Terrace Marshall, Robbie Anderson. That's
it would help. It would help Robbie Anderson. No doubt, it would help Robbie Anderson's fantasy value with Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, because I think you just substituted guys that the Vikings already have. They have Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook. If you were like, if you put Kirk Cousins with Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook and things like that,
But that's why he's been in the top 12 these past few years with those guys. I think to me, the biggest drop off is I believe Terrace Marshall is going to take a step forward this year. So I think that difference is him and KJ Osborne. But
wide receiver university. LSU.
Yeah.
There it is. But I want to thank you guys for all joining, and I want to thank everyone for watching. Make sure you guys tune in next week for a way too early top 10 running backs episode. You're not going to want to miss that. We'll be getting into this again. There'll definitely be some surprises you don't want to miss. And thanks for joining. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. And thanks to you guys all again for always coming on here and doing this with me.
Got you.
Yes, sir.
In Russ, we trust.
Unlimited.